Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Glad to have you with us today. Look forward to a good hour of discussion and engagement. Hope you will join us. Be sure to tell us where you joined from, and also be sure to pose questions, comments in the comment area. We love to engage and see those, so be sure and do that for us, and we would appreciate it. So, Anton, you want to get us kicked off for this today?
Yeah, guys, welcome to episode number 58 of the Human SOS Show. We've been doing this, a little bit over a year now, and Human SOS is all about really taking care of the human being within the organization, but not just from a soft standpoint, which is important, but really from many practical standpoints, and really looking at an organization, a workplace as an ecosystem that coexists and everything impacts everything else that's in kind of this own environment. And that's what we do as Prospective Force. We help companies to navigate that ecosystem and create the best environment for your people. We right now specifically focus on stress management because that's the biggest problem that we see. So if you need any help with that, reach out to us. Schedule at the end. We'll show you perhaps prospectiveforce.com. I think you can see down there scrolling. We have a free stress assessment. Go take a look at the assessment at prospectiveforce.com. It's a huge 60 questionnaire that'll give you 12 areas that you may be doing poorly in, and then you identify the one and start getting better. But today we're talking about creating leaders. It's something that is a huge passion of Kevin's, bit of a passion of mine. We've both done a good amount of leadership development in our careers and many different hats that we wore, but that's the topic. But first we'll talk about the agenda.
Welcome to Cheryl from San Antonio. Glad to have you, Cheryl.
Yeah, so first things first, coming up, we're going to talk about HR News Article of the Week, as we always do, which will be 2021 Key Trends in Leadership Development. Then we'll talk about the topic for the day, and it'll be starting out with making leadership desirable, identifying leaders without a title, motivating them to step into the unknown, and then motivating the new leaders to obviously continue to move forward. And then ultimately always how we can help. So let's talk about HR.
Welcome, Isaac. Isaac's one of my longtime connections. Glad to have you finally live, Isaac. Look forward to your engagement. Okay.
So, I know Isaac. Isaac is a good guy for LinkedIn. Does a lot of support for everybody.
Right.
But all right, so let's talk about the three focus points in this article. Talk about key trends in leadership development for 2021. This just came out on Tuesday, May 4th, and they identified the three main ones. Embracing inclusion and diversity was the first one, and really the focus with inclusion and diversity is that you want your facility, your organization, your team to really have full potential. And if you don't pay attention to inclusivity and inclusion and diversity, you're never going to be at your full potential. And some things that are silly that we don't consider is user experiences, right? When we do a lot of user experience and we don't consider it from a diversity and inclusion standpoint as leaders, that experience becomes below its potential. But we don't see it. We don't think about it because we have these blinders on because we're not paying attention to it. What are your thoughts on that being a big focus for this year, Kev?
Oh, definitely. One of our team members, Virginie LeMay, actually helps us at times to be sure that we think in an inclusive way, and just it's quite often it's not about intent. It's about not thinking about it. It is one of those. We talk about the sins of commission, but rather it's a sin of omission. Quite often people just get so used to things that they don't think about it. And then the other aspect of inclusion and diversity that has to be a part of that, not just ethnicity and race, culture, those things, but one of the factors with the current workforce is now generational inclusion and diversity, because we have such a diverse generational population, and the differences between those generations can be very remarkable. And if it's not considered in how our leadership is done, then again, like Anton said, we're going to be at the least common denominator, and that's not the best place to be from many angles.
Hey, shout out to my buddy Shannon from Colorado. Thanks for joining, brother. Yeah, we stream this on YouTube and Facebook as well. We don't really have a whole lot of following there, but we do stream it there, Shannon. Prospective Force is what you search for on Facebook, and I believe, yeah, same thing for YouTube. We need to. I know you'd want me to get on. We were actually just talking about right before we got on getting on. What is it called?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse, yeah. So we want to organize that. We want to get that going. I'm just trying to figure out logistically. It was finals week last week for my MBA, so I've not been breathing and finally can breathe this week. I'll work on it, brother. But yeah, we need to connect. Hey, man, I actually want to still see your mining farm. Sorry, I'm like talking to you directly right now. But so next point is encouraging authenticity. And that's an interesting one, right? But I think that ties right back into embracing inclusion and diversity. You can't really embrace inclusion and diversity if you don't encourage people to be authentically themselves. And I think that this term has become a little bit of a buzzword in corporate circles, and some people are kind of feeling icky about it. That's a funny word to use, icky. But it's something. Just because it is a buzzword, we need to understand, what does that mean? It's not that, like, I get the whole motivation thing. I get on stage and go rah rah and inspire people and be authentically yourself. That's a big motivation. Public speakers use that a lot. I'm saying that's important, but it's really understanding authenticity means skill sets. Authenticity means personality. Authenticity is a much more broader term than just pretending to be like, hey, I'm being real. Like this is me. So that's a really broad concept. And I really focus on authenticity is helping people to live within who they are, right? Not having to adapt because a job description says this. Match the job description, adjust the skills to be better fitting to that person so they can be more authentic. What are your thoughts on that one, Kevin?
Well, one of the pitfalls I see with authenticity is that quite often people lack discernment, and they lack a balance in regards to this, because they think authenticity is saying any and everything that comes to our mind. And they also think that it means to be authentic, that we cannot hold back information at times, which is not true. Authenticity, like Anton was talking about, is being who we are and being genuine. And part of that means being willing to say, yeah, I have failed. I have made mistakes. And these are them, not to a point of wallowing, because that's not good. But especially on social media platforms, the challenge is that networking on social media is almost, to me, akin to modern dating. And that is that, especially first date, we always see everybody's best spit and polished image and behaviors and all that. And frankly, that's not authentic. Whereas, the other extreme is that we're always negative and moaning and groaning. And so there's a balance in there. And I think that's what we need to seek out and encourage, as a leader, encourage our team to do the same, because then we have better chance of, like you said, Anton, putting them in situations and giving them tasks and so on that fit them, and they have the most likelihood of success.
I love how you said authenticity doesn't mean you say everything that comes to your mind. And that's something that's personal experience for me. I've always struggled with that. I feel like if I don't do that, I'm being unauthentic as a leader. And I've been overly transparent too many times that caused my team distress because I said something too soon, or I said something in a haste, whatever it may be, and the thing didn't have a chance to play itself out. I created a bunch of unnecessary fear, didn't actually pan out that way, but I felt like I had to share it. And I've learned that doesn't mean that I'm being authentic, because the reality is, how often do we change our mind? How often do different thoughts come to us that on one day it seems that this is the right thing, on the other day it seems this is the right thing? If we don't have that filter and we're just like a constant, regurgitation of everything that's in our brain is coming out of our mouth, that is a tough leader to work for. Like that's how I see it.
Well, and what happens is that people under the guise of authenticity can say some things that are very hurtful, divisive, and are hard to undo and make relationships very difficult. And I preach, again, not trying to be, in fact, don't be dishonest. But I think the key is, and this is what the challenge sometimes for me is, that my response, authentic response, may just need to be silence, and rather than having to say something. And so authenticity is a willingness to not say things at times that would not be of benefit to my team or whoever I am relating to. And so I think part of it, and what we really have to look at on authenticity, is intent. Mm-hmm. And that's hard because for me to look at somebody and say, well, they're not being authentic because they didn't intend something, boy, that's dangerous, because you're getting into judging someone's heart. And but I think as a leader, what is my intent? Okay, am I about to say this because I feel like I have to, or am I about to say this because it's the best for the situation, or so on? And sharing based on intent, the right intent, I think, is of value. And welcome and good morning, Karen. Glad to have you here. Isaac, you had me worried there for a moment. All the fives popped up. I thought that I was missing a secret code of some kind. I
just thought you guys were friends, and it was like a need to know kind of conversation.
No, not that I'm aware of. I may have to get with Isaac and learn the code, but no, he says it was a bug. So thanks for letting us know, Isaac.
And the next one is promoting a healthy culture. And culture is not new on the scene. We've been really focused on culture probably for about a decade. But this focus talks about a healthy culture where employees feel safe, valued, comfortable, and supported. And what they're tying in some stats, they did a research, and a recent study found that companies with a healthy culture deliver a return to shareholders 200 times higher than those who scored low. The study also suggested that investing in healthy culture allows employees to better adapt to change, and 70% of transformation failures experienced by businesses are because of culture-related issues. So 200% better performance with good culture versus bad culture, and 70% of transformation failures are attributed to culture. And I will tell you this, it's true. I've been part of great cultures where things just flow. I don't know if Shannon's still on, but we've worked together in the past, and we were part of a great culture. Our first club that we worked at together, it just happened. Things happened, and you didn't know, like, why is this happening? Why are people working so hard? Why are we achieving these records? Why is everybody coming around trying to stick their nose in our business to learn what we're doing? But they can't figure it out because it wasn't about systems. It wasn't about processes. It was about people feeling safe, cared for, motivated, compensated, and they wanted to put in that extra 5%. And that's what I tell leaders. You want a good culture. You're not asking people to do 50% more. You want to take your company to the next level, see if everybody could just do 5% more because they want to, because of the culture you've created, and your business will skyrocket.
Yeah, culture's an interesting concept. I've been in some HR groups, and start talking culture. It's kind of like, and one of my favorite sayings is kind of like nailing Jell-O to a tree. How do you define culture? And that's why one of the things that has resonated with me that we were able to come to from messaging is, and you can see it going across the screen, is because it's all about the ecosystem. And I think for me anyway, and maybe I'm just odd, but an ecosystem makes a little more sense in terms of what culture is about. And it has to do with not just one thing. An ecosystem has a lot of interacting parts, and the human ecosystem or the work ecosystem has the human component. And that's really one of the things that we focus on. Is a lot of cultures treat humans as being like machines, and that's not a healthy situation. For example, when we approach change as well, we're going to do this one thing and make this change, and we don't take into account someone in the mix that may not be able to practically or reasonably make that change well without some additional help. And so just something that we need to think about culture-wise to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Karen joins us from Florida. Karen's one of our regulars. Glad to have you on. Karen's always good to see you show up. So
shout out to Suresh. Suresh from India. He wants to start his own website development company. Good luck, Suresh, man. I hope that you do well with that. That's a big growing business that's not going to go anywhere. But yeah, so I love how you mentioned culture is a better way of looking at it as an ecosystem. I think people don't understand culture and really how big it is and all the different things that it touches. And when you look at an ecosystem, it represents this really massive thing. So let's get into the first point of ours for developing leaders. That's what we're talking about today is really creating leaders. The first step, right? The first step before you worry about creating leaders. Do you look like the kind of person? Does your job look like the kind of job that people want to work? Right? That's something that I want you guys to think about and ask yourself, is this a desirable position by the way I am living it and experiencing it and showing that experience? Because I've talked about this a lot. When I took over in Arizona, I had a team of 150 people that I was overseeing in the market and with 4 different locations. Big meeting. Ask who's interested in becoming a leader. Out of 150 people, 0 hands went up. Boy, am I in trouble. Like the first thought that went to my mind is, what did I do? Why did I pick up my stuff from Colorado and move to Arizona when there's not a single person out of 150 that wants a leadership position that pays $80,000+ even for assistant roles, right? What is going on that's so bad that none of these people want to do it? So I started looking around. Well, managers are working 12-hour shifts. Managers are not taking care of themselves. They're not showing that they have time to nurture themselves. They're always angry. Meetings are always focused on driving, numbers. There's really no fun. And I was like, well, duh, it makes sense. The position is not desirable because these leaders don't look like the kind of people, don't live the kind of lives that these team members want to emulate, right? What are your thoughts on making leadership desirable, man?
Well, I think that one problem we have with causing leadership not to be desirable is how we approach making people leaders. The traditional way that I see it happening, first of all, is the selection process. When we consider making someone a leader, we assume, and assumptions, what they do for us. And what happens is we assume that if someone's good at a particular area, that then they are somehow qualified and should be moved into a leadership role. And that is a huge error because the reality is a majority of people do not desire to be leaders of other people. Now, I'll throw out a caveat here. I am of the opinion everybody needs to be a leader of themselves, and that they will be leaders in other realms. But at work, a great number of people do not want to be a leader, and quite often the only reason they'll even accept a leadership position is it's the only way to grow their career, which is a whole nother part of leadership development that's a challenge. So what happens is people see their coworker get moved into leadership role. They get a title, they get a clipboard and the keys to an office, a company vehicle, whatever, and say, go and do. And they really aren't prepared, because to move into that role, you have to have 2 major skill sets. And this is what we talk about, is managing things. You've got to be able to manage things well, because if you can't manage things well, you can't lead well. And then the other is the leadership skills. And so they watch people thrown into this situation without the requisite choice of whether they need to be in that role to start with, and then throw them into it with little or no skill training, and hope that they can kind of figure it out on their own. And the only thing that has kind of mitigated that problem a bit to this point, but it's not doing as much as before, is what Isaac's comment. And he says, true leaders consider themselves as such, don't consider themselves as such, they simply lead. And that is true. But the challenge is that those that are already prepared by life to be effective leaders are getting less and less. And we can get into some of the cultural aspects and pieces on that. But so what, as far as making leadership desirable, we watch somebody get thrown into that role and just struggle and struggle. And like you said, Anton, because they don't have requisite skill sets, they're doing the 12-hour days, 6 days a week kind of thing, and it's terrible.
And it's I love what you just said about, people not being prepared, because I'm thinking about it as you step into a leadership role. The hardest part shouldn't be the systems and the processes. That should be the easy stuff. That's the check this box, dude, 2 + 2 = 4 kind of deal. The hardest part is getting people to believe in you. The hardest part is getting people to follow you. But what happens when a new leader steps into that role? Are they focused on the people part, or are they focused on the technical part? I would say 90% of time plus, they're focused on the technical part.
Yep.
So that's a big gap. Of who's the gap on? The gap is on the leadership team that's ahead of them, of not prepping that early. And I love that you brought that up, because that was one of my biggest focuses all the time. I don't want somebody just stepping into the role not knowing how to do the things they need to do. So when I was running leadership development programs, it wasn't just about leading people. It's like you said, managing things and leading people. I taught them how to manage things well and efficiently. I taught them reports. I told them how to do everything before they stepped into that role, 6 months probably before they knew how to do that. And then they were practicing. So when they stepped in, they weren't wasting their time on a thing that should be just easy, right? Once you got it down,
right.
And then they can spend their time on the focus on the people. The other point is peers are watching, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's always on that cusp. Do I move into leadership role? Do I not? What do people say about the leader now that they stepped in? What does the leader act like? How's their behavior changed? Do they look more stressed? And if they're not prepped, it's going to look horrible. And I've seen it many times. And it creates what people don't understand is it creates a really bad trend. Leader steps into a role, leader gets out of the role. Leader steps into a role, leader gets out of the role. Nobody wants to step into that role in the future if that happens. So prep your people, but first remember to make it desirable.
Well, and what is a common event is people move into a leadership role, and then next thing you know, they've left the company for any of a number of reasons, none of which are real good ones. Most of the time it's because they aren't prepared and aren't being supported and so on. And so they're out the door and everybody's going, well, what happened? Another one, and this is something I had to learn in my military career, is helping leaders transition. We watch leaders be forced to transition, but they're not helped in transitioning well, because quite often you're taking someone that has been a coworker and friend to everybody, and now they have to take the leadership role, which includes accountability. And at that point, it creates a dynamic that neither party is really prepared for. And the transition was never done well. So it looks really bad, and it will and has destroyed friendships and relationships of all kind in the work environment.
Yeah, let's get to the next one. So the second one is identifying leaders without a title, right? You're trying to create leaders. So you're looking at raw material, for better lack of words, right? And seeing what is these people's potential? Who's that diamond in the rough that I may need to polish and work on and, get them ready? Because like I was saying, that story when I had 150 people not raise their hand for leadership, what am I supposed to do? Am I just supposed to try to hire external people only? And that's a mistake, guys. If you're bringing external leaders all the time and you're not developing from within, you will not have the culture that you want. Bottom line, we mentioned culture as being highly important as one of the focus points. If all you're doing is trying to find your external rock stars and constantly plugging them into leadership, not going to work. I'm just telling you, you need those peers to move up, take care of their peers, keep moving up. And people see that growth, get inspired and move on. But you have to find that raw material. You have to see. So what are some of the things that I would love to ask the audience? What are some of these things that you see is a form of raw material, skills, whatever, perspectives that you think leaders without a title have? Or what do they show as far as practice goes? What are your thoughts on identifying leaders without a title, Cove?
Well, going back to, I'm going to put Isaac's first comment up because I think that's an indicator. The raw material leader is somebody that goes about doing what they need to do and without being asked. And so I guess you would say they demonstrate initiative and some other qualities, some good judgment and things. And then the other comment he makes that is, again, related to this, leadership, not a role, but personality. Some who think that this is a role will fail because of their position will poison the entire stew. And so, yeah, there are some qualities of leadership that we should be watching for in people. And I have what I teach as 3 qualities of a servant leader that are necessary. So if you're looking for your next leader in your group, these are 3 qualities that can be a great starting point. One is the willingness to take responsibility, and especially when the person will take the responsibility without being asked. Second one is accepting what they're dealt and working from that rather than complaining about it or always looking for a way out. And then the third one, and I think this one is real key and becomes a real stumbling block, is humility. We think that the rock stars and those folks are the great leaders. Well, quite often the problem with those folks is their forceful personalities, their high visibility personality may not be what is needed for most leadership roles. It occasionally matters, but most of the time it works against them because they are not as prone to make humility choices, and that becomes a real obstacle in their way.
Yeah, I love I definitely agree with all of them. And I think we're all going to have different ones as our own. I definitely agree with responsibility and accountability. Sorry. Somebody asked, what is the purpose of these online meetings? Hey, Suresh, the reason we're doing this is we are a Prospective Force. We're an HR consulting coaching company, and we're trying to educate people how to better take care of the human being within the workplace. And we touch on many different topics, but we really focus on life, health, and leadership, kind of work environment. That's kind of what we're focusing on.
Well,
and we're live streaming many different places, buddy. So if there's only a few people on here, there's more on Kevin's and stuff like that.
And we're also about a movement, and that is the Human Sustainable Operating System movement, which is, maybe the short version is, bringing humanity back to the workplace. And so we want to engage everybody we can as part of that movement to bring about some changes. And Isaac offers another practical tip for identifying leaders without a title is ask the people around them and around you. It's really funny because people that have leadership qualities quite often don't look at it that way. And when you ask others, though, they say, oh, yeah, without a doubt. And it's really kind of amusing. And I think that helps to identify those people. Just ask people around them, do you see them as a leader?
Mm-hmm. Love it. And yeah, the one that was before I said that, it's called internal locus of control, right? That's when we're talking about a person accepting fault and things like that. I call it, and that's not my term. It's where people understand that I control what's inside. I can't control the external environment. So I'm not going to blame the external environment on outcomes. I'm going to find the things that's within me that I can change and can control to adapt to make those outcomes be different and better. And that's huge. I don't see enough of that these days, especially in the younger leaders. And I am a somewhat younger leader myself, but we are losing that external locus of control. I've hired a lot of people in my time, developed a lot of people in my time, and I'm seeing that get less and less and less. I think the generation that was probably the best at that is actually your generation, Kev. I think that, your folks are somewhat best at saying, you know what, I can't control everybody. I can't control what's going on out there, but I can take care of what's on the inside.
Well, and it's a byproduct of a skill, and that is self-control. And when we learn to have self-control, we begin to really understand what we can or cannot control, more so than if we have no self-control, we think that we can't control any of it. And so we go with what we're dealt. And yeah, it's a key part. And you even hit on indirectly just the people that automatically do self-awareness, which is, a current phrase that's used a lot. But if people are going to be a leader, they're going to have to do and practice self-awareness a good bit. And it's the type of thing that if you, as a leader looking for other leaders, is if you are observant, which you should be, you will see people that are self-aware. Another indicator that they might be already on their way to being a leader.
And that's something that, Isaac's question made me think, ask who's leading. But there's also those people are already emerging as leaders, right? They're already kind of step into those shoes. But I think there's also plenty of talent out there who is not currently leading, but has the potential to do it. And that's where the great leaders, the great developers, they catch those early signs and they inspire, they motivate, they build, and they develop the skills needed for them to feel comfortable to step out there. So let's get into the next one. I think we got 2 or 3 more. So motivate them to step into the unknown, which is kind of what I'm talking about, right? We're trying to get the people that don't currently want to do this to want to do this. And I don't mean that everybody should be a leader, or at least a position leader. Right. Some people may need to be leaders that stay in their roles and they just become masters of their craft. I talk a lot about this. I can't remember the book, but the book talks about superstars and rock stars, right? Your superstars are people that often get leadership positions and they move up fast. Problem with superstars, they're short-lived. They're thinking about their next role while they just got their newest role. That's just how it is. I used to be one of those people. But your rock stars are the people that are been in the company for a long time and know in and out of the job. People come to them to get help in technical tasks or whatever it may be. Be careful not to push those people by trying to motivate them with pay or motivate them with an advancement position. They may not want that. You have to custom tailor the motivation to the person. And we talk about this a lot. Know your people.
Right. Well, and that's a system challenge that we face. And for any organization that's going to develop their ecosystem to be more healthy, is a way, look at practical ways, real ways to celebrate the rock stars and those people that don't want to be in a positional leadership role. They want to be the best they can at what they're doing. And unfortunately, right now, if you don't move up the ladder, so to speak, using an old phrase, then you get kind of left behind or left out at some point, which is a real problem within the ecosystem of an organization. Because at some point, even the staunchest and person with the greatest character, the rock star, will eventually, if you're not careful, you'll lose them too, because they say, I'm not appreciated and I have no future in being excellent at what I'm doing, so why try? and it will demotivate them so remarkably. And so, yeah, and talking about stepping into the unknown, I know I have to be careful with this, but I think a factor in looking at this is people that have some kind of a faith system, because without, frankly, in my opinion, someone that doesn't have a faith system is going to be a lot more challenged to step into the unknown, because the risk is too great. Whereas if you've got a faith system that helps to transcend your circumstances, then you're going to have a much better chance of being willing and able to step into the unknown.
Love it. Love it. Let's get to the next one. So now motivating the new leaders, right? Now that they're stepped into that role, whether it be an actual title or just simply leading peers, how do we go about motivating these people to continue to stay there? How do we motivate them to care more? How do we motivate them to be more engaged, to care deeply about the outcomes, the people, all those kind of things, right? What are some of the things that come to mind for you as an audience? How you as a leader have motivated new leaders in the past? We know that financial incentives run only so far. Once a person reaches a certain level, right, there's going to be no longer that benefit of increased motivation because of increased amount of pay. Very small uptick, right? So what are some of those other things that you've done as audience to do that? Type that in the chat, and we'll go ahead and read it out. How about you, Ken? What are some things that come to mind?
Well, what we have as a graphic gives some indicators and are true, but one is missing, and you'll know that I'm going to be throwing this one out here. But vision.
It's a V word. I knew it.
The V word, yeah, because what ultimately will motivate us. And by the way, in current vernacular, people, I think, quite often also call this dream, somebody's dream. But the big something that we look forward to, that we strive towards, and I call it vision. And when we can help a leader, make sure that the leader shares at least a part of that vision. And what I would suggest is the further that someone moves up in their leadership roles within an organization, the more they better be able to share greater parts of vision with the organization. Because what's going to happen is, if they don't, they're either going to lose motivation because they their visions aren't meshing more, and so their priorities will be affected, and so on. And so that will happen. Or the other option, and I'm afraid we see this happen too, is when we put people, move people up in leadership roles, and they do not mesh with the vision of the organization, it creates division. It creates some relational pieces. It creates some attitudinal problems that aren't intended by either party, but it's the nature of someone not aligned well. So, if we get a shared vision with someone, motivation becomes a byproduct of that.
You're hitting on intrinsic motivation, and that's ultimately the point, is that if you're constantly just motivating extrinsically, which unfortunately too many people still do, you have short-lived results. At some point, the way that our brain works, that reward, if it's extrinsic, has to be a greater and greater reward in order to elicit the same amount of work. That's just how it works. So the point is, right, money can still be motivating after a certain amount, but the increase to create the same amount of motivation has to be greater and greater, and you can only pay your people so much. So you have to understand those internal ways to motivate those people. And Kevin, I love that you hit on vision, because that's number one. But then also looking at vision, not just from a standpoint of like their personal vision or stuff like that, but very concrete, right? You want a house, you want to retire at this point in life. You want to have these kind of things for your kids. You want to be able to have a family and the freedom to do that. Whatever those priorities are, that's part of their vision. That's part of what they're trying to accomplish. And if you can help them to plot a path of how leadership positions that they're just stepped into are going to help them to get there, It doesn't always mean financial. It means, like I said, freedom of schedule, whatever it may be. They're going to be much more likely to want to stay on that path because they see it's reaching for the things that they truly desire.
Well, and I'm looking at our graphic because those are all aspects of motivation, common goals. Plus, in that regard, just helping people know how to set effective goals becomes a value. And that means as you set strategic goals as your team or as an organization, that you include those goals that fit the people that are assigned to accomplish them. And another one that I've been really kind of focused in on of recent is the concept of success. And we assume success means a certain set of criteria and that we can apply that to everybody. And it doesn't. Success, really, part of it is I think we have confused success with rewards. Rewards are what you get ultimately as a big payoff for struggling and growing along to a point where you get to a plateau, a hilltop, whatever. What we really need to help our people understand and should be part of our culture is success is something that occurs day to day. And success is hand in hand with failure. Because if you're always theoretically expected to be successful, then there's no room for failure. And anyone that is much of a leader at all recognizes that that's an impossible expectation. So redefining what success is and then considering that it is different from one person to another, and being sure to know your folks and understand for them what will be a measure of success. And combine it, and because you've got to also have measures of success for the organization, for the team, and then you figure out how to mesh those.
No, I really like your focus there because everybody has different measures of success. Everybody has different outcomes, and expectations are going to be different for each person. And what it makes me think about is when we talk about team dynamics, right? And we have that commander style, we have partner and facilitator style, right?
Right.
Different measures of success for each one of those types, right? When teams underperforming and things are just in shambles, we need a commander to come in and just organize things, get everything together, get things moving the right way. And it's a lot of do as I say kind of leadership, but it's all done by example. Those people are usually really hold themselves above the line. They emulate great examples, but measures of success may be more operational there, right? Where we're trying to get all our systems working. Maybe we're not even worried about the bottom line yet. We simply got to get people to do the leading things that are going to lead to the bottom line. Then a facilitator comes in and maybe partner, right? Partner's next. So then a partner comes in and their measure of success may be leadership development. Now they want to see how many people you can grow. It's not always revenue, but the point is if all your people think, I can only succeed if I drive this bottom line to X amount of dollars, that's not my strength. I shouldn't go into that role, or I'm not going to feel motivated for it because I feel like I'm always going to fail. Think about the team dynamics when you're thinking about measure of success for your leaders.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, of course, we're keying in on stress. If you want to really stress someone out, apply the wrong leadership style to that person. And you will put them in immeasurable amounts of stress that will create problems, especially with performance, as part of our graphic is, and it will cause them to struggle with that bad attitude. And so using and knowing your folks and using leadership styles appropriately with your individual team members and the team dynamic as a whole is a part of motivating leaders. And if you don't do those things, you're going to make it more difficult on yourself and your team.
Absolutely. Let's get into the last one. I think it's the last one. Yep, that's it. So, guys, the point here is that leaders exist in your organization without you realizing. They're ready to step in, they're ready to help, they're ready to nurture and help your team and offload some of the things that you may have as a leader on your hands that are overloading you. You have to become kind of like a identifier. You have to spot these people, you have to nurture these people, you have to take time, but you have to be very proactive. For this thing to work, you have to think, what is my pipeline a year from now? If I leave, or if somebody leaves on my team as a leader right now, who's there to fill it in? How well do they understand our processes, our systems, and more importantly, our culture? How well do they fit in for the type of role that they're going into? As Kevin said, what kind of leadership style do they have, and what kind of leadership team, what kind of team are they going to be leading? Do those two match? And the reality is most people are not doing that. So that's one of the many things that we do as a coaching and consulting company focusing on is that early identification, that early development, that strategic thinking for a year out. That's part of sustainability. If you want to be sustainable and is from a human operating system, just in general in your environment, you have to think in cyclical terms, right? It's not linear to where, okay, I need a person, bam, there we go. No, because if that person leaves, the other person's stepping into their shoes to start developing them early on. And so on, the cycle continues. And the hope is that the people that are being developed early on, that number's growing. That's how you know you're doing the right thing as a leader from developing leaders, is the people raising their hands going, I want to be this as fast as possible. And they're willing to do more in order to have the opportunity to grow and learn.
Well, and as you continue to, and one of the mindsets of an effective leader is from day one, they're looking at their replacement and they're thinking about who, if needed and when needed, because most leaders will want to continue to grow and expand their knowledge, their experience, and so on. And that will mean that they will need someone to replace them. Plus, one of the most miserable positions as a leader is to never feel like you can be able to, for example, a lot of leaders end up burning out because they won't take time off. And they won't take time off because they're fearful of what will happen in their absence. So as a leader and as you are working with your team, you need those folks identified so that, just very practically, that when you need to be away, whether it's for a day or a week, or if something happens from a health standpoint, a longer time, that there are people prepared to be able to step in with a minimum amount of transitional problems or upset. And that's part of your role as a leader. The other consideration is there are some people that will want to move up to a point, and they will want the additional responsibility to a point. Well, as part of your ecosystem and your cultural planning, are there points that you can do that? Are there roles that you can put people in that want to move up to a degree, but they don't want to move any further? Because that is a real, very real phenomenon. And if you don't plan for it, you will move people up to a point and then lose them because you will try to force them to the next level. And that's not what they are desirous of or prepared for even. So, this is a challenge. I train field leaders very regularly, wrapping up a 10-week course right now with a group of field leaders. And one of the frustrations they express is they are learning how to be effective leaders, but the rest of the organization does not have effective leadership. They are more what I call a manager-only culture. And as a result, it makes it harder to be an effective leader. And so the ideal ecosystem leadership, managing things and lead people, is throughout the entire culture. Because in order to understand the growth and movement of leaders, it has to be throughout the entire organization. And so that's part of what we like to do, is to come in and help organizations get that bigger perspective and not just build leaders in one segment of their organization, but to put together an ecosystem that fosters growth both for the superstars and the rock stars, and helping there be a place for both, and then helping to identify leaders, because what we talk about, if we take the principles that we discuss and we apply them from the beginning, is one approach. And that's why if you're trying to start an organization, we can help you with that, because we're going to help you be able to look beyond getting through the first year or what have you. We are going to help you look beyond in terms of an ecosystem that can grow if that's what you want to do. And what we can even help you figure out if that's what you want to do. You may be content to build a entrepreneurial venture that is just you, and that's all you want. And so being able to develop an effective human sustainable operating system and an ecosystem that will help in that process is what we're about. And we are, I don't normally brag, but I guess it's not bragging if it's true, right, Anton?
True statement.
We're good at it. And the team that we have is real good at it. Go ahead.
You just made me think about the handoff, right? And the interesting part, what I mean by handoff, one leader stepping in, one leader stepping out, usually a really horrible experience for the team. Most time it's not pleasant. It's done really poorly because there's not a transition period. It's usually really abrupt. I see it where like, don't talk about the leader leaving, like don't say everything's hush hush, and all of a sudden, hey guys, I'm out in a week. This is so and so, and we're ready to go. I don't believe in that. I believe that it's okay for people to know that this is coming. It's a natural cycle. It's okay for them to know that the new leaders come in. It's preferably leaders work simultaneously to do the handoff. Because what happens when you don't do it right, your skills of a leader, like culture relevant skills that are not necessarily can be acquired elsewhere. They're specific to how your team does things. They get lost when that handoff happens. And when there's numerous failed leaders because of this process, the difference between two leaders back of those bad handoff to the initial leader is astronomical. I mean, that those people are so far behind the curve. And I've done this because I work with underperforming teams, and you come in from one side of the country and you're going, well, things should be this way. Things are easy. Everything's good. And then you realize that these people don't even understand those concepts because those handoffs didn't happen properly. So it is so vital to ensure those handoffs are handled well. And
I went back to one of our slides. That's part of the reason that you have people that are not motivated at all to become leaders, because we don't see that happening well. And when it doesn't happen well, you have increased exponentially the struggle for the leader to be able to be effective, both the outgoing and the incoming leader. And that goes back to the holistic concept of the ecosystem. The movement along the process of growth and development as an employee, as a leader, all parts of the organization need to flow throughout the organization. Transitioning from one team to another within the organization should not be such a major upheaval that it causes people to lose interest, demotivated, burn out, whatever, because the entire system is built on the platform of human sustainable operating system. And that's what we really thrive on. And because it's what we do and it's what we're good at, that's what we love to do with organizations.
Well, that's all we got for time today, guys. I think next week we have a guest set up. He's a leadership development individual. We'll bring him in and give you guys added value. We're going to do better with looking for guests just to kind of keep things fresh, keep you entertained a little bit more. We know that just listening to two dudes sitting here talking to each other is not always the best. We like our ladies when they're here, but we'll also look for guests. But always thank you so much for joining, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in.
And we're going to make an ask. Okay. We have the assessment, okay, and it's on our website. It costs you nothing, and it gives you some insight. And if it's insight that's helpful, great. And if you want more insight, there's another step in the process that's free. And so just go to the website, www.prospectiveforce.com, and look for, I believe it says take the quiz, Anton.
Yep.
And take the quiz. I promise you, we're not going to spam you to death or drive you crazy because you take the quiz. We will give you additional opportunity if you want it, but we want to get your feedback, your insight into the assessment, and help us to be aware and to grow and make it better as we go along, because we ultimately want to be able to use that assessment to help people get to the root causes of what is causing unmanageable stress and be able to take small steps. We do 10% branding, and we just 10% of a step, just move forward in an area and go from there. So really encourage you, please, to go check out the website, take the quiz, and then Anton or I, you can direct message. You can contact us through the website, whatever, reach out. And if you want to have conversations about what we do and about what we can offer, please reach out. One of the challenges, just to be honest, that we face is we're focused on human SOS movement and organizational ecosystem and those things, but we're not good at cold calling people and doing that. So one of our hopes is that if we're resonating with you, that you will reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in talking to you about helping me and or my organization. So please do that if it fits the need. Otherwise, if you go to my profile, you can find 50. Let's see, we're on 58. And if you're interested, I can give you a single link that will take you to all 58 episodes. So you can, we have provided 58 hours of free coaching. And we believe so much in what we're doing that we're giving you that. And if you want additional personal assistance, we're ready to do that.
Thank you so much, guys. We love you. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week. God bless. Come back and join us next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 9 Mountain Time. And I can't remember the Central European or the India time, but join us. And if you're not sure, DM us. We'll help translate. Make sure you find the right time. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.